I've always thought it's interesting that time feels like it's constantly speeding up. As a child, an hour felt like a lifetime, but as an adult, a year passes by too fast to keep track of it. It seems to be a universal experience that as we look back on our life, the long hours and days compress together into a blur. Everything feels like it was just yesterday. With our lives constantly accelerating, we've become a people who hate to wait. Waiting is the worst. Time is the greatest commodity because no amount of money or talent can buy you more of it. So when it feels like we're forced to waste it, that's a difficult test to pass. With our plans and our dreams and our long-held promises unfulfilled, waiting may be the greatest test of all. Genesis tells the story of two brothers, Esau and Jacob. Tradition had it that the older brother would earn the family's inheritance and carry on the family's name. Genesis refers to it as his birthright. In this case, it would be the older brother, Esau. But surprisingly, God had told the boy's mother that Esau would end up serving his younger brother, Jacob. That must have come as a shock to both Jacob and his mother. Actually, the two brothers had been born as twins, but the few minutes that made Esau older were enough to secure his place as the traditional head of the family. Those few minutes might as well have been years. The birthright was Esau's, and Jacob was left holding what was starting to feel like an empty promise. When would his brother serve him, and what would that mean? For years, there was no sign of God's promise being fulfilled to Jacob. Esau grew into the role and the expectations of his position. Jacob remained his mother's favorite, but nothing much else. Eventually, they got tired of waiting. Who hasn't felt what they did? What good is a promise if it goes unfulfilled? Maybe there was a way they could get things started. Maybe God was waiting for them to take the initiative. Suddenly, every moment began to look like an opportunity to find their own way. Maybe Esau's birthright was something they could take for themselves. Maybe they could steal a blessing. So they plotted, they manipulated, and they lied. They attempted to bypass the waiting by carrying out their own plan. They took matters into their own hands. They acted for their own benefit. It was crude and it was clumsy, but it worked. Jacob bartered for Esau's birthright, and they deceived Jacob's father and stole his blessing. They got what they wanted, and with it, the family disintegrated into conflict and resentment. Jacob was forced to flee for his life. Once you recognize it, this impatience is all over the Bible. Our ancestors found it as difficult to wait as we do. It's hard to think of a biblical promise that didn't test the patience of its recipient. David put it this way in the Psalms: "How long, O Lord, will you forget me? Forever? How long will you look the other way? How long must I struggle with anguish in my soul, with sorrow in my heart every day?" It's so easy to think that things always work out easier for everyone else. No one else feels this stuck. No one else is left wondering and waiting like me. But the Bible is more honest. God's people often wait, and often they dislike it just as much as you do. Trusting God's plans and timings challenge their faith in the same way that it does us. Like them, you have dreams. You have promises that you've held on to for years. You've spent countless nights praying with all of your strength, only to wake up the next morning into the same reality: more waiting. Our world is always looking for ways out of it. We are desperate for convenience and efficiency, and we will gladly pay to jump the line for next-day delivery and anything labeled fast acting. But God often works in ways that this world finds uncomfortable. God calls us into the test of waiting. Something interesting happens when we wait. The real test turns out not just to be wasted time. The real test turns out to be trust. Can we trust God enough to offer Him our time? Or do the passing days leave us feeling suspicious that we're better off on our own? And is our impatience worth the consequences? The consequence of forfeiting what God is doing for what we expect, when we expect it. The test of waiting reveals our deepest desires and hopes. Are we waiting for only what we want? Or are we waiting for Him? That line is often thin, but discovering what motivates our waiting may be the most important part of the test. What are you really waiting on? Listen.